Well, greetings all you out there in entertainment land. Welcome to the
Right.
Vlogcast. Of course, this is going to be a channel update. We had some torrential rains that came into our state, and they decided to seep through my basement into my movie room and into the office and everywhere down the stairs. And it's been a lot of shoveling mud, moving carpet squares, mopping, broken dryer, which has been fixed, and lots of repairs. And discovering, because we're not on a floodplain and this doesn't really happen, except for on these rare once in a 100-year occasions. Of course, I have no insurance on it, so.
Out of pocket, yay! Adulting.
So my wife is also with us, at least for the time being. So I said, we're not going to be doing as usual this week because there's just not a lot of time. I'm kind of in a crap-looking shape right now, so no video. Downstairs is a mess, and that's where I usually film. So until I can get at least the movie room underway, it's going to be pretty much bare bones with content, maybe some vlogcasting, and actually what I'll probably be doing is mostly a slideshow for the new releases, which will be so some of y'all might actually think, oh, that's much better.
Well, is there anything that's like a priority this week, or is it all probably the usual?
There's at least one criterion out this week, so that's going to be.
Yeah, there usually is.
So
So that one definitely yes, please. Whatever it is.
So bear with us just as we are. But I thought this would be a time. I was lucky enough so far to have not lost a lot. I did have some of my manga kind of fall into not standing water, but because I had mopped up a lot of it, but it was still very wet because it wasn't drying. So those the damage is still not quite yet been able to see because I have no room to stack them, so they're kind of just there. My manga shelf just collapsed and spilt everything there, and I've had to move all of my lower lying DVDs and movies kind of up a level, which so they're kind of just hanging around all over the house downstairs, which is why there's no place to sit. So lots of just general chaos at the moment. But it did bring to mind is when we come to loss, we've all had threats to our collection at one point or another, or we plan for potential threats. Some of us have actually lost numbers of our collection. It's like, well, why not talk about lost stories or what we've done to help prevent that? I know my wife has a good story about that. Matter of fact, I can let you start us off if you want.
Oh, Lord.
Well, first of all, you have to tell us your name and that you're an alcoholic.
Either that or just like Dr. Doodle, hello, my name is Ralph, and I'm a stray.
Well, my husband goes and gets my vodka out of the freezer because this hurts, like big time fucking hurts. The year was 2001. I had a Gateway. Yes, I'm dating myself a little bit. Gateway computer with a 20.
Some of you out there weren't even born yet.
Yeah, I'm sure. I was in my first year at ODU, Old Dominion University. Woohoo! Monarchs!
Hey, I remember when the Gateway computer was a Mac of its time.
Oh my fucking God, yes. Okay, so I had a Gateway desktop computer that had a DVD-ROM drive. And it also...
Well, that was a big deal at the time.
It was. And my monitor was this huge CRTV, like 25-inch monitor, which even now would be a huge ass monitor and a half for a computer. But at the time, because it was the CRT, was the CR whatever, because it was on a flat screen. It weighed like 70 pounds. So it always required like my stepdad or one of my other like very strong male friends to carry it. And yeah, that was not very fun to have. So that was my DVD player. The DVD-ROM drive, the computer itself, and then the huge monitor. So my roommate my first year, what?
I was going to say another thing the kids today might not remember is the days where computer monitors and TVs had to be lugged by the strongest person you could find and strapped in and built it into your car.
Well, and not to mention back when most computers, like when having a drive of some kind for CDs or DVDs, back when that was not only a standard but a selling point. Nowadays, like so many of them, it's like so many of them, it's like optional now.
I'm my age here. I paid extra for this DVD-ROM drive because it was not only a DVD-ROM drive. I did later on aftermarket and the DVD rewritable drive, which was a lot of fucking money at the time, in $2001.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hundreds. It was fucking hundreds. And to think that, nowadays it's like you buy a computer and having a DVD drive or CD drive, even a basic CD-ROM is not standard anymore. And it's actually more expensive to get done. It's like, oh shit, we have now crossed the Rubicon. But I spent a lot of money because I had I can't remember what I was playing DVDs on before, but when I bought that computer before I went away to college, I had, I think, 5 DVDs. And my first DVD that I ever bought, oh my fucking God, I still remember it. It was awful. It was a Kirsten Dunst movie where she was away at a boarding school in like the 1960s or something like that. It was called, I think, All I Want to Do. I think that was the first DVD I remember
that.
Yeah, that was that first DVD ever.
A team movie.
It was a team. Shut the fuck up! It was a team movie.
Let's see, my first DVD.
I thought you were gonna say like Dick at first. The one that she did with Michelle Williams.
That was a fun movie.
The All I Want to Do movie was perfect because I was going away to college and I was like, okay, I'm living in the dorms, blah blah blah, with a bunch of rich white kids. Okay, shit's real. Over the course of the school year, I added to my collection, and unfortunately for me, because I was concerned more for space instead of reality, I kept all my DVDs. I would unbox them into those remember those CD flaps, those books?
The wallets.
You had the giant booklets. So I bought one of them that could hold hundreds of DVDs or CDs or whatever. And at the time, I had, I want to say between 50 to 60 DVDs, which in 2002, in the spring of 2002, that was a lot. Not a lot of people had them, and I had movies that people liked, like horror movies and comedies. All at the time, the big ones that people fucking liked. One of the ones I had was, I think at the time, was not a Criterion, but it was a super expensive special edition version of Armageddon that I got at Walmart in my hometown, Louisiana, when we had gone the summer before. I found this limited edition copy of this foreign film about an Italian castrato called Farinelli. I got at the Virgin Megastore in New Orleans the summer before. So those DVDs were in the pile in that booklet that got fucking stolen. The last week we were in the dorm. The last fucking week we were in the dorm. I'm not really sure how it happened, but my book of DVDs, which my roommate, her bitch ass, was aware that they were there, went missing, along with my very expensive Canon camera at the time. My diamonds, my diamonds also went missing. What went missing from her except for the diamonds I was wearing in my ears at the time, and the ones on my hand. My roommate, what we're missing of hers? One of her textbooks. So,
although that's not exactly
mother,
either.
Yeah, so my mother to this day still believes that my roommate stole from me, and that she knows with her because she was like, "Oh my God, Kat." What, Kathy? I'm missing a textbook. Bitch, I'm missing thousands of dollars worth of shit, including fucking diamonds. Priceless ass diamonds.
Well, you know,
again,
a textbook in the hand may be quite continental, but a diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Exactly, and fucking textbook. My camera that went missing was more than her fucking textbook. I'm like, bitch, I got diamonds that are missing from like the 1800s. You're worried about a fucking $40 textbook? Let's not forget the goddamn DVDs, the 50-something DVDs that went missing, which, if y'all remember, DVD shopping in the early 2000s was expensive.
They were not cheap. Yeah.
They were not cheap. They were like $30 a pop.
I mean, hell, at that time, VHS still brought in a little bit of money.
At that time, you were still buying at retail price.
Yeah.
Exactly. And she's like, oh my God, one of my textbooks is missing. I'm like, bitch, fuck your textbook.
One of them. Jeez.
Fuck your textbook. I got thousands of shit missing over here.
Granted, if she was a science major and was taking all the science courses, then that would
probably... It was communications.
Yeah, I know. Why do you think I switched to English? Was one of the reasons I switched to English. You could go to a used bookstore and get all the books for me.
She was like, oh my God, Ken, I got 10. I'm like, how my shit's worth more.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah,
well, with
collection went missing, except for the two that I had loaned out to friends.
Yeah.
Which was A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger, and I forget what the other one was.
Which wasn't that the worst when you lend stuff out and you don't get it back?
But yes, they did give it back to me then. I got Knight's Tale back.
See, and I have a very, very specific rule about this. If I lend it to you, it comes back, and if it doesn't come back, it gets replaced. And there have been 2 times I've been totally screwed on that. And because again, I don't want to step on your story with the really important one, but she's heard a lot about my one brother.
Yeah,
he asked if he could lend a copy of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to a friend of his. Never got it back. He refused to replace that movie for almost 10 years.
Didn't you loan some shit and Brandon to Clinton? The guy that went missing and never came back?
I don't recall. No, maybe I don't recall.
Actually, there was something, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, there might have been.
Wanted to borrow something.
Yeah.
And and then he ended up loaning it out to a friend. Which,
yes. He did. Yes. Okay. So he usually
ended up replacing it for me because you were the one who asked me to do it.
And he usually does. Yeah. He was horrible. I almost had to force him to replace that movie. And he ended up getting me a multi-pack, but it cost like $5. The movie's a $5 movie. But whatever.
Well, I haven't loaned out. I haven't loaned out my movies to very many people, and not that many people have really asked for them. But on the few times that I have, there have been times where I haven't gotten them back, and luckily they were like relatively inexpensive things that were easy to replace. But even so, it's like it makes you feel like when someone borrows something and you see that place on the shelf where it once was, it's like one of your children's gone.
Yeah.
Why I've especially in the last 10 years, I don't borrow out to anyone.
Yeah.
It is imperative that my collection stays the way it is. Right. I have the ability to copy something for someone to see the film. You know, you're not selling it or anything. You're letting them see it. So to me, that's legal.
Here's the name.
Yeah.
When I was years ago, when I was working in another place, like I was working in Starbucks, we had a girl. I loaned her 3 of my DVDs, and I was like, a month went by, and I figured to myself, okay, it's been a fucking month, girl. You should have watched those movies by now. Come on. So, I went to ask her for the movies, and she's like, oh, my man, he's still watching them. Okay. A couple weeks go by, she still has
just
not returned.
Perpetually.
It gets to a point where I realize she has no motivation to get them back to me. She's no intention to get them back to me.
Yeah.
So I go to her and I say, okay, I loaned these to you almost 2 months ago. At this point, it was 3 movies. They're not that long. Either watch them and then get back to me, or just get back to me now. I need them back because I'm kind of getting a little. Something told me to demand my movies back. And she kind of got an attitude, but I said, just give my shit back, bitch. Just give me my fucking shit back. She brings them back in the next day. They were a little scratched the fuck up.
Yeah.
The cases were a little beat up, like, whatever. I'm not going to argue about that. I got my shit back. They smelled, too. The cases smelled. Because she was a little good. So it smelled like piss and goddamn cigarettes.
Yeah.
So I got my shit back. I cleaned up the DVD cases as much as I could. The DVDs, okay, everything's good. About a week after that, I'm off from work. I get a phone call from one of my coworkers going, OMG, Kim, guess what the fuck happened? Long story short, this girl, she and her baby daddy, she was pregnant also, and another one of her friends had this criminal enterprise going where she would go to get a job at a convenience store, restaurant, wherever, she would work there for a few weeks and learn the ins and outs of the security procedure of this place. And then her baby daddy and his friend would swoop in and rob the place. And at some point, someone got caught, I'm guessing the friends, and he snitched on all of them. And the police showed up while she was working and arrested her because we were her next target. Including my very expensive jewelry that I had and my parents had bought. Because I still had jewelry that my parents had paid for that I wore. I had a Louis Vuitton purse. And anyone knows about Louis Vuitton, they know that's expensive. I had a Louis Vuitton purse I had saved up for and I had bought myself. She had a whole list of things that she wanted, apparently, including other coworkers that had expensive stuff. Because she was like innocent, because whenever her baby daddy and his friends would be, they would be masked. They would hide their identity. She would act like a victim, like, oh my God. And then a couple weeks would go by, she would quit the job, citing stress and I'm in PTSD. And then she would move on to the next job. Yeah, it was a nice little criminal enterprise they had going on. And it worked for a couple of years. Until someone got caught and stitched on someone else, who then stitched on their friend, who then stitched on the rest of them to cut a deal. And the Starbucks that I worked at, we were her next target. Yeah, so after that I said, oh, hell no. Ain't nobody getting my shit, because if she had not given me my DVDs back that week before, I would have been fucked. Because she had no intention of getting them back.
I actually had 2 stories that made me very suspicious. 3 if you count one, but it was a friend that recently passed, and I don't really want to badmouth. I just don't want to speak ill of the dead.
I'll speak ill of the dead. My grandma's a bitch.
Yeah, but this one was a good to most people.
Okay.
So but when I was in elementary school, I had loaned out Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Also, by the way, if, that can tell you my age, definitely. And he was a good person. Actually, he recently friended me on Facebook. Unfortunately, he was originally from Pakistan and had to go back. Well, he didn't quite get back with me with the game, and the game ended up traveling to Pakistan.
Oh, fuck's sake.
2 years later, I got a package
no.
postmarked from Pakistan with the game in it. The other one never made it back because I
Was there
Mhm.
was there a
No,
save was there a save file on it from Osama? Because apparently this is true. Apparently Osama bin Laden was like a big fan of a lot of like, despite like hating America and hating the West and everything, he was actually a really big fan of like American pop music and porn that was produced in the US, and I believe even video games. And so that's why I was like, well, if there was a save file marked under Osama, then that might have told us something.
I don't know. That's a pretty common name, but they everyone loves Mike Tyson's Punch Out, so that's that would make sense. The worst one for me, and again, I do. There have been times where I flat refuse to loan anything, and I'm still really cautious about it. And there's a reason why I bought my brother a copy of Press Start. That way, he wouldn't have to keep borrowing it. But basically, there was when I may have mentioned this story on this channel. I know Brandon knows it. And I think when I moved back here, I think the last time I moved back here from Salem, because I moved back and forth a lot. I had a friend and coworker who I thought was a very good friend and coworker. And when I left a few books for her to read. She asked if she could borrow a couple. And I left a book of Robert Frost poetry. I left Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And I left Yusuf Komunyaka's Neon Vernacular, which I had the man himself sign at a reading at Roanoke College. And that was one of my prized possessions. I thought I could trust this person to get these back to me. It never happened. I am still very miffed about this. And I'm even more so because she was a good friend. But the few times we were able to touch base after that, I didn't want to lead with, where's my stuff? I wanted to lead with just, and work my way into it. And it just never, that didn't work. And I think the last time that I got in touch with her, I was more direct. But I still was trying not to lead with, where's my stuff? And I think that just, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to hear from this person again. And that really bugs me. But that was a phenomenal book of poetry by a phenomenal poet. It was autographed in person. I should never have let that out of my sight. And I'm still peeved about that. But most of the other stuff is either that's been stolen was either more amusing or more frustrating. Like, it mostly involves my brothers. My other brother, I won't go into the details, but stuff did go missing, and he would replace some of it. He bought me. He took. He said a friend took, and it may have been his friend. I don't. I'll give him the benefit. A copy of Alice in Wonderland, the Disney remake of it, and he replaced it with a better copy. So, okay, he did. He took the initiative to do that. But the other one was actually amusing. And that was when, again, the first brother, when he worked the night owl shift at Kroger, one night he met this totally random dude who was sleeping in a car and invited him. This was when he was living with me in Salem, and invited this random guy I'd never met to come sleep on the couch. Yeah. And when the guy left, I was missing "O Brother, Where Art Thou," 8 Mile, and Monty Python's Life of Brian. At the very least, the guy had good taste. But I was missing those 3 movies, and of course my brother wouldn't replace them. But interesting postscript to this, and again, I think Brandon and Kim have heard this story. We later found out that this guy was the exact same guy that I had met at a previous alumni weekend when he was hitting on a mutual friend of ours who we already thought was shady because he was hanging out with the Pilams, who were the bad group at our school.
Actually, you have a story that I did want to follow up with because it's one of my biggest fears currently.
The mold.
Which is about the mold, because my collection is at least intact other than the manga. Yeah. But standing water has been in the house. There may be standing water still in the house. And my worry, of course, I think everybody here has some amazingly rare and unique pieces in their collection. And mold is a huge fear when it comes to those type of things. And you've actually experienced that.
Yes.
Never put anything in cardboard boxes in a basement. Never.
Well, yeah.
Never submerge them in water.
That's generally a good idea. Well, and actually, I have another pro tip I'll be coming up to in a minute. And but yes, what he's referring to, and I probably mentioned with you guys, I know I've mentioned the mold scare, but a few years ago, we had the house I'm in is actually up. It's not really very likely. I'm not going to say not possible, but it's extraordinarily unlikely that the house itself would ever be flooded. Just the way that it's positioned, the way that it's built up. But there is a crawl space under the house. And apparently the crawl space got wet and dank and moldy and was blowing that up into the house through the vent system. That was not a good thing.
And that's when they discovered all the kids you buried down there.
All right.
Oh no, that was the previous owner. But no. But anyway, well, a lot of the mold was in the walls, so what happened?
We don't want to get John Wayne Gacy's ghost mad.
That's true. That's true. So anyway,
Yeah.
So basically, it was so bad. Well, no. This got even more complicated because, as it turns out, most and this is a good thing for all you kiddies at home. This is a good thing to know. Most insurance companies are rat bastards and consider mold to not be something that they're going to cover against. So so don't rely on your insurance. But we lucked out. I hate to say it because it was definitely not lucky for the young gentleman involved and whatever. But this happened shortly before a young gentleman ran off of the road directly into the house. And the house had to be partially rebuilt because of this. And between those two issues, we were given an option to rent a house in a neighboring neighborhood for a year. And I was there for a few months before my brother and I, rented a place. But it was a nice change of pace briefly. But yes, because of this mold issue, there was a great deal of paranoia. I think I did end up probably chucking, I didn't really keep notes. I probably chucked 30 or 40 issues of comics, maybe more. And I probably chucked about a dozen DVDs, including Full Metal Alchemist, Bubblegum Crisis 2040, a couple of, I think, Star Wars Phantom Menace, I really care about that one. But anyway, and a couple of others, and some CDs too. I think there were a handful of CDs and there was a lot of stuff I was paranoid about, and am to this day paranoid about some of it. including one of my Nickel Creek CDs, which is not good. But this is the pro tip that I have. Never use wet wipes on chipboard. The two of my collections were in a very high-risk area. Well, a lot of them were. But two of them, I was paranoid enough to try, which is why there's a small amount of warping on my gorgeous and super rare NIS Anohana set.
Ooh.
And it's why there's a little bit of warping on my really nice Paul Newman tribute collection.
Yeah, warping.
I was so upset about that. I've kept them. I hope and pray and keep my fingers crossed that I'll never have a mold issue with them, but they are now damaged because of this. And there were some small losses, but it has left me super paranoid about letting stuff get wet, about any of this stuff, and yeah, it's fun.
Well, it's amazing. Water is the ultimate giver of life, but the ultimate destroyer of everything. And
it makes me, again, baffles me. I work in a library, and I get to see all the time how very, very, very rare it is that people put water bad for paper. So few people think about that concept when they're delivering their books and DVDs and CDs in the pouring rain sometimes.
So,
well, hey, I mean, we had to, with those Tide Pods and shit, we had to tell people like don't eat them, and with the Lysol injections and shit, we had to be like don't do it just because Der Fuhrer says so, and it's just that's the world we live in now.
So, just out of curiosity, just on a lighter note, I don't know what it is, but the green screen effect that Dave has makes it look like he's drinking a brick wall.
That's what I noticed too.
It's interesting.
Hey, don't knock the brick walls, because I remember having those bricks. They were cardboard. You had to put them together. They were like the Lincoln Logs of the time.
Yeah, maybe that's what Trump means when he's like build the wall. It's in liquid form.
We just gotta green screen a wall. That's all we gotta do.
Exactly. Right. That'd be a lot cheaper.
Which actually, well,
that's like that. There was actually that what they called it, the digital wall of like just. Yeah, which that apparently that's a whole other thing, but it's not a green screen one, but that would be pretty cool.
So Dan, I know it's no secret that you ended up having kind of losing a lot of your collection through a very messy stage, because a lot of your channel is dedicated to kind of building it back to where it was again, and I know some of that experience is pretty raw still, I'm sure.
I have 4 separate.
Well, it's quite the sordid tale.
But go ahead,
you have 4 separate stories.
Whoa.
I have 4 separate stories.
It really is.
It's
really quite. Go ahead.
Did you want me to go, or did you want you?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to tell my first, and then you can go ahead with yours. My first.
Yeah, we can alternate.
Because I am, because all of you guys know I have Asperger's syndrome, and I think there was a time before I was in college, and I had a lot of anger issues going on with my parents and whatnot, and I guess one of the psychologists went and told my mom to get rid of like my entire book collection at one point. So what she did is I had every single Goosebumps, every single Fear Street, every single Ghosts of Fear Street, every single Christopher Pike book. all the chillers, all the shivers, all the strange matter books, every single collection that I had on books, she donated to my school library. And she did that as a method that a psychologist said to get to control my behavior. And what that did was kill my ability to actually enjoy reading. I liked those books. I mean, I was still kind of a teenager at the time, and I was a collector of books first, then music, then movies, whatnot. But that to me, I still to this day, even though things are better between me and my mom, and me and my folks, I guess, to a certain extent, but I will never forgive her for that.
Well, I can't blame you there. I mean, that would destroy me.
You've heard about the tales of like why comic books, the earlier ones, are so valuable. It's not because they were small print runs. It was because parents would routinely clean out their children's stuff and say, "Well, you're too old for this," and would just throw out the comics. So it just made those that survived the purges excitingly rare.
Yeah.
Because
well, and it was also because moms. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and also as my story illustrates, they are very prone to the vagaries of mold and other such age and wear and tear as well.
Well, that, and I mean, mothers, generally speaking, are, at least in my experience, were always, like, my mom was always the one to say no to any, what it was, video games, movies, you know, she was always the one to say no and to stand in the way. And then my dad usually let us see such and such thing, or he let us play such and such game behind her back. And, you know, but it was like, in my experience, moms were pretty much always the driving forces behind that kind of artistic repression. And so that's part of why I'm so like dogged about freedom of speech and things like that.
What's your sordid tale?
My sordid tale of woe. Well, here's the thing. So, like, my collection, like, I have circulated things in and out of it, you know, because I've wanted to have like trade-in credit, or I've just, you know, I didn't really like that movie, and I don't think I'll ever watch it again or whatever. You know, so I've gone through phases in my life where I've collected things, and then I either lose interest, or, you know, I need the money for something else, and so I'll sell them or use them for trading credit, and it's fine, you know. So like it's not like I'm a hoarder or anything, because I do tend to like to circulate the collection whenever it's applicable, because, you know, that's just a smart usage of you know, that's just a smart usage of your resources. But then when it came to being in a relationship, I thought, perhaps naively, I thought that being in a relationship meant being willing to sacrifice anything for one's partner, because, you know, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was sacrifice, and it was, you know, doing whatever it took to make the relationship work, basically. And you know, it was only I just, because my ex-fiance was so financially irresponsible and was so, you know, just not in it to win it like I was, and you know, someone that just, she said she cared about it, but clearly didn't, because she had no problem with leaving me for someone else, or leaving me and then hooking up with someone else immediately thereafter. You know, so it's that tells you a lot about a person's character, but it meant that outside of a group of a select few Blu-rays that I just wouldn't sell because they were too, it would have hurt too much to part with them. Outside of that, like I had like 7 massive shelves at one point, and then it got reduced down to like 2. And so it was pathetic, and like all of my, like, busts and, cool things like that, they were gone. I video games and consoles and books and furniture and things like that. Now, most of that I was okay with because it was stuff that I had inherited from my parents that I had no emotional attachment to. And then it eventually got up to like, more and more personal territory. And, there were some things that I had to part with that I hated myself for having to do it. And I hated myself even more because of the fact that she just betrayed me so badly and didn't really seem to care about how badly she betrayed me. And so, um, with when we had the 600 in unemployment benefits, I was in such a state that my expenses were low, and so I could afford to build my collection back up. And I actually got back, so like certain things that were like signed by Lloyd Kaufman, I was able to buy some of those things back. Certain things I was able to buy them back in a better edition than I had them before. Other things I bought back in like a cool Canadian edition that I didn't have before, that was cheaper than the version I had before. And so now it's it's 4 shelves right now, but they're all pretty large. I mean, the other shelves were they could vary in size, so it wasn't a great representation of things. But now the collection's been built back up again, so it's kind of a story of triumph there. But it's it's such that it still hurt a lot to have to part with these things that I had spent so many years building up. And because we collected a lot of VHSs when I was a kid, but when DVDs came around, my parents didn't really want to. My dad was never really one to buy movies, and he would always yell at me for buying a movie when it was time on my own. And I did Blu-rays head, hands, and feet because I didn't have this massive DVD collection. And I felt kind of bad that I didn't have these movies readily accessible on the shelf and all that stuff. And so
same way. And my dad's probably been like your dad used to be. Still, in my adult days, he's like, "Why do you need that crap?" That kind of
yeah. Well, and that's one of the many reasons why I'm glad that my family is no longer in my life, because that would just create many, many more problems than or two. Kind of a related story that's not the story that most people know by now if they've watched this show or watched my channel or whatever. Similar story is, I would get a collection of movies together, and like my dad would bitch and moan and would yell at me about it and would put me down because of it. And then but wouldn't have any problem with wanting to borrow things and watch them, and then not give them back for quite a long time. And but so it was like, that's again, that's part of the bullshit convenience of being a parent, I guess. And a particularly authoritarian parent is when you're able to you know make your children feel like shit for things that they actually care about, but then you have no problem with taking advantage of it yourself when it's convenient. And I would buy movies for my parents and for my brother with thinking that they might get into it as I had, and they didn't. And so then I was like, well, can I have them back, basically? And eventually I just took them myself because I was like, well, they're never going to watch them. And again, it was only when they were gone that they, you know, said anything, but it became such that, you know, why, you know, you know, it's very convenient, and it's like, you know, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, but it's like, then you were never going to watch them. You're never going to be appreciative of this thing that I did for you. And, you know, by that time, my allegiances were next to nothing. And, you know, but it was such that, you know, I was glad that, you know, and my parents were the kind of people that, you know, I was in apartments that they had kind of handpicked for me, places that they knew I couldn't afford, and yet they would use it as an excuse to, you know, badmouth me for not making enough money at that time. And, you know, so it was like another way to maintain control. And then they would also walk around the apartment like whatever apartment it was at the time. They would walk around it like they owned the place, and, you know, touch everything and inspect everything, clean everything. You know, just again, no sense of boundaries whatsoever. And I was really afraid.
Let alone try to have a private porn stash out in the open, right?
Well, and that's kind of where I was going, and not so much that, but like, you know, anything that I collected that might have been remotely problematic or not, you know, in accordance with whatever their ideological dictums would tell them. You know, I was really worried that they would get too inquisitive, and then it would start a big fight. And again, not so much a porn stash as much as just like, you know, they might get the wrong idea about something, or they might, you know, not understand or deliberately misunderstand something, or, you know, who knows what. So I was really worried. And so that's why I was glad also to be able to not have to hide certain things, or not have to, like, you know, constantly pretend. So I mean, that's a story that I haven't really talked about so much, but you know, nowadays it's like, well, I can as much horror display as I want, and they won't, you know, be there to tell me that my soul's in danger, and, you know, any number of things without knowing me. And I mean, that's why I had to change my last name on social media, because I guess that they wouldn't say who the friend was, but it was just some mysterious friend of theirs that had seen the poster for Dark Web Mystery Box, and they thought that I'd become a Satanist or something. And it was just like, you know, that just told me that they'll never change, and you know, that there's no point in pursuing this relationship with a person that, even if I did take the time to explain it, it would not cut any ice with them. And yeah, it's just no more, no more. And but now that I'm free from all that, I can display as much horror stuff as I want, and nobody's gonna badmouth me for it. And, you know, while also taking advantage of it at every turn, you know, as if there's no concept of personal property or boundaries or anything. And, you know, when I was selling stuff for my ex-fiance, only then did they say, but you've spent so long collecting those things, so many years. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, yeah, and you gave me absolute hell for it every step of the way. So, you know, if anything, I thought you'd be thrilled, you know. So I mean, again, it's just hypocrisy. Thy name is parent, you know.
Well, now if you want to, you can grow your own porn stash, and you can shave it off if you want.
Well, some of those porn stars, they've shaved off plenty already, but
Whatever
you know,
you
well, I do have the Arrow release of Caligula, and I have Showgirls, and I have a couple other things, but it's
All
not,
right.
you know, it's not full blown porn there, but it's enough to cause worry to the puritanical members of society.
Just show them a night of something strange, or Bunny the Killer thing, and trust me that they will Probably.
Oh, and I've got my beautiful Hellraiser bust there, and it's like, that alone would make them crap their pants, and it's it's so nice to be able to be
needles.
Yeah, and it's so nice to be free of people whose their superstitions and their just their need to control everything. When that's all free, when you're free from all of that, it's a very liberating feeling.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm glad that have been able to build it back up bigger and better than before, with cooler additions than I had before, and being able to just be totally out of the closet, so to speak, with horror and everything like that.
So Dave, you had some other stories you wanted to tell. So
yes,
I thought I'll get a chance.
Well, the second story is about my music collection. At one point in time, I had a book collection that would probably make you cry, and a CD collection that would probably astound you. But as I went into college, I started putting my CDs into the CD wallets that you would see. They would be easier to transport, I thought. But after coming back from college, I had to deal with the situation where my parents had gotten used to me being gone from their home, so I ended up having to find a place on my own. So I started to live with other roommates, and those roommates ended up arguing with each other like every single day. So I ended up hanging out with some less motley crew sort of people. This was way before I even started this shit and started getting my life back in order and shit. But I didn't know they were as unsavory. I trusted these people, and I started to bring my stuff over to their place. Started to move out of that place into another place, and then evidently they went and sold like half of my DVD collection and half of in fact my entire CD collection.
My gosh.
And including like 4 guitar amps and 3 guitars that I had. Because I was at one point in time doing a band thing with a band buddy that I had, a friend for like 22 years or whatnot. And after building that back up, then because I was starting to date Tammy, my band buddy decided to get jealous of the time that I was spending with her. So when I was starting to move my collection over, and I kept my collection in A to Z order even while I was packing. So I had all these like army duffel bags that I'd collected over time. The big ass duffel bags that look like backpacks and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
I had my entire collections in those things to move over. Well, I come back to get my A through M's, and they're entirely missing. My whole place is a mess. There was all kinds of spills. Things were broken. Evidently, my band buddy had just had a temper tantrum and like completely destroyed the place. I let him have a key to my place because we were recording stuff at the time. I trusted him because he was, a friend for like 20 some years. You don't expect to have your place trashed and after when you're just moving your shit over to your girlfriend's place,
Yeah, that's a nightmare. I mean, what's funny, so with the lending out thing, I have only ever done that a few times, and there have been times where I haven't gotten that thing back, but it was something that was relatively inexpensive. And so I wasn't too freaked out about it. But then, there are like whenever it's been, whenever I've had roommates and things, I've, been okay with them borrowing it and like watching it in their room or whatever because it's still in the building physically, and it's relatively easy to get back, obviously. But for anything that is like a high value item, I don't think I've ever parted with it because I just would my paranoia would set in immediately. But like if they were like wanting to watch it or whatever, then I'd be like, oh well, I'll come over and we'll watch it together, or something like that, and I have no problem with that. That can be quite fun, but it's yeah, I think that my paranoia would sink in for exactly that reason. I wouldn't want people to just abscond with whatever, and well, and that was kind of a weird thing about like my first attempts at a YouTube channel. They went up on a channel that my parents knew where it was, and my dad, saw um, the video that I had done with my complete collection, and he made me take it down because he was like, "You just revealed everything you have," and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, I didn't tell him my address, I didn't tell him my room number, I didn't tell him where I was or anything like that. And but that's just the way that they thought. They thought that like everybody and anybody was coming to get me or
Well,
kill me or take my things or whatever. And
technically, the smartest hacker could probably figure out your IP address and where the fuck you are.
The smartest hacker could have your entire account and everything else if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So actually, Dave, your tale actually is very similar to something that actually was my most significant media loss. Because really and truly, this is kind of a pittance loss-wise. It's just a media shelf, some manga, and a lot of
and
stuff.
some of my music ended up disappearing with certain friends too. I mean, it's tragic when you can't like lend things out to people and expect it to be back in the same shape.
But Jacob could tell you, I used to have a massive music collection myself at one point.
It wasn't bad.
Once I wasn't not like yours, but because Jake had a much more. You actually probably still do have like a pretty massive collection, but you collect a lot of singles though.
Well, I did.
I collect a lot of singles.
I'm not sure they publish a lot of singles anymore in physical media, but maybe.
I think they do on ever since they came back with vinyl.
I don't do vinyl.
They do that so often.
So I remember.
Well, see, I have a massive digital music library because of my brother being the big music person. Like what I am for movies, he is for music, and possibly even more nuts about it in terms of collecting the CDs and especially vinyl. And but I have a massive digital collection largely because of him having helped to get it started. And like I had more physical CDs, and nowadays I don't think I have any. And largely it's because, I have my music backed up on an external hard drive, and it's not like I use CDs for like a driving in the car or anything. I used to, but now I've got an FM transmitter, and so that seems to work out. And I'm just good with the digital library that I have now. If I were to collect on physical media for music, I would definitely collect it on vinyl because that seems to be the way to go. But in terms of my overall music needs, I've largely converted over to digital because it's not like movies or whatever where you can argue that, oh, it's got the special features and it's got, the this and the that. And the best you could say with music is maybe something cool in the liner notes, which that assumes that they have something cool in the liner notes. But it's not like movies where, generally speaking, they tend to give you more for your buck. But and also just the video quality can't really be matched.
And keep in mind, when I'm talking about is during a time period where MP3s were just starting to catch on. And I would listen to a lot of music that they wouldn't broadcast on the radio. They might be Giants or Less Than Jake or Pain or a couple of others. And I would have, in my car, I'd have the little cassette with the wire that goes down to your little CD player, and the CD player would still skip occasionally when it would hit the bad bumps. And I remember having all of them transplanted back into their cases, because I used to have them in a big old CD book. But I transplanted them all into their cases because I was going from, I graduated college and I was moving on to grad school. So I was driving from where I was living to Richmond, and ended up hitting some ice and a 1-foot shoulder, which ended up sending my car careening out of control with about a double or triple barrel roll. I'm not quite sure. I wasn't counting at the time. And my CD collection, among other things, was all over the yard of the individual I wrecked in.
Oh.
And so I ended up out of that. After resurfacing a lot of them and doing all of this, I ended up losing about half of my collection at the time, which was very considerable. I mean, I bought back some. Some of them were hard to buy back because there were certain bands that were just not doing for what I did. I had some autographed cases at the time that were destroyed, which were kind of sad at the time. But it was a big loss because I was really big into music at the time. I was actually not all that into movies at that time. For me, it was music and comics and some video games as well. I used to be a gamer too. But
for me, it was music and books at one point in time. I mean, I had everything from the classics to like the entire Stephen King library. I mean, at least with my books, for the most part, at least when it came to some of the classics, those my mother let me keep.
Well, yeah, I was lucky with my movie collecting because it didn't start until grad school, with my first one being The Slayers Season 1.
But my mom bit me where it hurts, so it
that would drive a wedge. Well, that will drive a wedge into your relationship like nothing else, won't it?
Well, I'd never forget it. That would be for sure at that point.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there have been plenty of things that I've never forgotten, and were contributors to why I was like, well, I can't be with my family anymore if they're gonna be this way, and so I understand that, and that there are always going to be those deal breakers with whoever it is, if it's your family or your friends or anything. You gotta know where your personal lines are, and you have to be courageous enough to enforce them when someone does cross.
There was a moment where I almost took that route, where I almost just decided to disown my parents and my family, and just run away from it all. And that was a point in time, where things weren't great at home, and things weren't great with friends and finding friends. So I have to say, my even though I have a lot of friends in the film business, you guys are my friends. So thank you for letting me know you guys. So
you
and vice versa.
Yeah, it's good to know everybody here, and I will say I rarely ever had, I don't think I can ever recall a case where I've ever borrowed something that I've not returned it in ideal condition, because I mean, I'm sure Jacob has a story where I wrecked all of his stuff when I borrowed it.
Oh
But,
yeah.
you know,
Listen to what he says.
I would be, I whenever I get something that I hate borrowing things, because it used to be, you ever get that where you had friends and then they would say, hey, yeah, just borrow this. And for me, it would be like, I don't want to borrow it, because when I'm borrowing something, I feel like obligated to keep it safe and there.
Yeah.
So I keep it like separate. And
Is it safe?
Exactly.
Yeah, you gotta keep it under lock and key, basically, and it's like that. Well, that puts you in a pretty precarious position, and I don't think people.
The way I put it is the best person you can trust with your stuff is a fellow collector.
Yeah.
That's what I've found. I mean, I know that if I borrowed something to you guys, if you lived like near me, I know I would get it back, like in pristine, because I know you guys are like that with your own collection, you know.
Well, and it's like the other thing we haven't talked about is the old you know, get the Teamsters to break your legs kind of thing if you don't you know, get it back in one piece or whatever. And it's like, you know, we haven't had to do that kind of enforcement, but at the same time, like if it was something of mine that was valuable, then I would, you know, go kind of bananas on somebody. But you know, it's but I wouldn't expect that of anybody else, you know, if it was something that mattered to them. But you know, it's just one of those things that you gotta know what you're giving out and what you're willing to risk. Like, you should never lend something out that you know, if it didn't come back to you, that you wouldn't be okay, you know, with it. You should only ever lend out things that you only ever lend things out under the assumption that you probably won't get it back. Because if you do that, then you won't be disappointed, or your world won't be destroyed or whatever if it doesn't come back. Or again, if it is valuable and it's like a friend of yours or something, then you could be like, oh, well, we'll watch it together, or come on over, or do whatever. I mean, it's not an either or thing, but it's like, you know, just be careful with what you lend out there, because there's a good chance that even if it's a good friend, that it may not come back for whatever reason. And you know, it's not a pleasant thing to think about, but it's still true. But you know, it is what it is. But
I mean, actually, you're right about one thing, and that's something else with the latter part of the conversation, something to come close to ending on, is what we do to try and mitigate or keep some stuff safe. For instance, I'll lead off with what I've done, and actually, I did find something interesting in this whole project, because I had to move my shelves away from the walls because I was worried that the water was coming through the walls.
How many did you find behind them?
I found one. There was one that I had thought to myself, I ended up buying a replacement because it's like, I know I have this. It must have been lost in the move. No, it was lost behind the DVD shelf. But that's the thing, is I have each and every one of my movies cataloged. And having a prior record video-wise of my whole collection is a great thing. And if I was to like lose it under something that's covered, not flood apparently, but if, like, let's say other things happen, I'm not going to even mention them, because, you know, don't mention the devil if you want to appear. But you know, I actually have that as a part of that. I would have that covered. But again, now to me, that doesn't make up for certain things, because there's certain autographs, there's certain movies themselves that it's just, you're not going to find them again. Or if you do, you are incredibly lucky. I can think of at least 2 or 3 items in my collection that are either done by indie producers, or they're just not made anymore, and they rarely ever come up on eBay or some of those other things. That would just be heartbreaking if they were lost. because you can try and financially replace them, but some things are kind of almost priceless in that way because there is no price on it. So what do y'all do as far as protecting or shoring up your collections?
Well, I mean, I almost had an incident of that with my Power Rangers set, just because I, thought I might be able to get some money from it when I was in need. But that's one of the things I'm so glad that I couldn't sell it, because they weren't willing to buy it from Second and Charles, because they didn't have like a certificate of authenticity with the signatures and stuff, and I don't blame them there. But I was so, looking back on it, so thankful that I didn't sell it, because that would have killed me. And I mean, my ex-fiance, to her credit, I mean, she said to me to not sell my stuff, but I knew I had to, because, well, otherwise we weren't going to be afloat. And I knew that she didn't have anything of value to sell. And, it was just a sacrifice I was willing to make. And I thought, that maybe she would appreciate, the full weight of what all that meant. But clearly not, but what I've done instead of that, I think, is anything that's got a signature, I don't sell that anymore. And if I were to, like, the things that I've gotten back in the collection, my big resolution has always been, if it was something that I had in the collection and I sold it because of whatever reason, financial or whatever, my resolution was always to get it back in a bigger and better form. Or like, if it's a Canadian edition, then not really bigger and better, but just different, something that gives it that extra little something to make it stand out from the more normal form that it was in before, but also relative to other people's collections, because obviously I watch a lot of those on YouTube, and obviously we talk about them all the time. And to me, it's important to always have things in your collection that, that they stand out relative to what other people have. Even if it's that, and that can be either the movies themselves, if they're not necessarily typical for what people of a certain stripe, what they have in their collections, but also, even if it's a common movie, having an edition that is different than what you see on YouTube most of the time. I think that helps you to stand out really well. And it's just, I think that's really what it is because there are definitely some things that, like, if a better edition of something is coming out, then yeah, I'll sell the old one, no problem. But it's just more so about keeping that mental log in your head, and also being able to get something back bigger and better than before, if you do have to sell it, or if it does get stolen or whatever. And luckily I've been in a position to do that.
So Jake,
and also just the moral of the story is to not ever sell your collection for someone else, for the sake of someone else, because most of the time that person is probably not going to appreciate it, and you'll end up regretting it later. So that's like the big moral of that. That's why it's a tale of woe for me. But it's okay to sell things if you want to, but just don't ever do it for the sake of someone else, because 9 times out of 10 they won't appreciate it.
So Jake, how do you keep track of yours, or keep them safe?
Well, I have dabbled with the whole idea of keeping a log, and I'm just not very good at it, but I try.
You were very complex when you were doing them, but I think that's how I finally settled on how I did mine. I made mine very simplistic. It only took me like a minute to log something. I go in, find the movie poster, and make that a part of there, and then I go and do the movie, the year, and I mark a couple of other things.
I think what he's talking about is that I did have a project going for a few years where I tried to not only log the date and title, but like I did like director, lead actor, basic ratings, and then I tried to give my own rating and synopsis. And I gave that up for dead long ago, but I keep
That
it
would
as
have been interesting if you ever completed it. That would
it
be.
would be awesome if I completed it. Of course, part of it is that to give my own synopsis, I have to watch a crap ton of stuff I haven't. But actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because I do have trouble keeping track. And as it turns out, I recently acquired a movie off of eBay that I already had. But in my defense, it was getting it with a whole bunch of stuff I needed, and I just got carried away and whatever. But I'm pretty sure you do, Brandon. In fact, I know you do. But Dave and Dane, do either of you, by any chance, need this movie?
Let's see. Hold on. Actually, yeah, I don't have the Hurt Locker actually.
Ah. Okay, well, I might send it to you then. I'm trying to. I was thinking about it. I was like, there's no way. This is one of those movies that is not one of those ones you mentioned that because everyone and their brother has this movie, and you go to any video store, it's $5. But I wanted to find a good home for it. But that's a good example. There are some movies, especially the ones that are cheap and widely available. You cannot remember if you have them unless you have a good system for it.
Well, I didn't have the Hurt. I didn't have the Hurt Locker in the collection for quite a while. I mean, I had it at one point, but mostly it was because I wanted to rewatch it, and that was because I remembered seeing it in the theater, but I was like, I remembered not really being blown away by it, but I also was younger, and maybe I'd appreciate it now.
These not really what is it worried about buying extras when I'm buying from many different sellers at once.
Right.
But I know you do keep track of it because I know you had like an app that you.
I have a movie app that I go to, and where is my?
I feel like the one you recommended, Dave, was like a paid subscription or something.
You buy one. You buy a $10 subscription, a lifetime subscription. It's $10, and you can put unlimited titles on this app. And for the ones that are independent and whatnot, you create titles for.
Yeah. So, is that like CLZ Creator? I know that's similar to one I had.
Movies, something or other. David Sterling actually got me onto that app, and it's pretty cool. I mean, what if you keep up with it? But it's
I don't ever have a problem with keeping track of what I do or don't have because, well, I think because the way that they're organized on the shelf is always so like everything is alphabetized right now, and and I also like if nothing else, I could always go to my Instagram because I do have everything that I have. It's I have pictures of it, and I can always check there if I really need to, but I pretty much always remember what I have and like what edition I have and things like that, largely because in my head I have it in organized in that same way.
A big part of my issue is that I don't have the shelf space. I don't have where I am living. I don't have the option of displaying even half of my collection. So I can't just look at the wall. Half of it literally is in storage because there's just no room in the house. So it's like, I don't know where.
Well, and that's what James Rolfe ran into because he's got probably a bigger collection than all of us put together, but it's mostly VHS. And then like even beyond the collection that's readily visible in the nerd room, even beyond that, I know that he's got closets and bags full of overstock, and it's like, well, that I imagine must be a nightmare. Plus, he's someone that inevitably people will just donate things, and inevitably he'll get a lot of things that he already has. And, it's just like that. At that point, I think, yeah, you'd have to have like a really extensive filing system and, which, I mean, he already has that when it comes to the movies actually on the shelf. And he puts them into genres, which I did. But for me anyway, I found that caused a lot more problems than it solved, because I just agonized over what movies to put in what genre and how hyper specific to be and how general to be. I didn't know. And so now just having everything alphabetized, that's a much more objective way to organize things. Because
even there, do you say a? Do you say an, l, la? Do you count the number as a number or the word? Or there's still some subjectivity there.
Yeah.
There's a little bit, but it's nowhere near as bad. It's nowhere near as bad as genres, though. Like now, because and any of those, I tend to go by like. Honestly, that's why I brought up iTunes as well, because iTunes will do that automatically. And like, for example, they will put numbers separate. And technically, whenever you're out, because I look up the rules for alphabetizing things, and like I try to observe proper etiquette there. So like you'll have the does not count. So the aviator. You put that, the aviator, you put that in A, or, an officer and a gentleman, you put that in O, things like that. But, it's just, because I'm a big, grammar and proper English language, spelling and system and all that stuff. I'm that kind of person. And, so the term formerly known as grammar Nazi, but I don't know if we can say that anymore. But
I tend to ignore the and count everything else. So that's kind of arbitrary, but
see now.
Well, I try to observe the proper etiquette, which is you ignore the letter A. Trying to think what else. That's usually the few exceptions, because for the most part, like the word "and," you would put that in A. Like if you did like by the sea, you'd put that in B. So there are definitely exceptions, but usually it's those three that you can ignore. And then with numbers, you can it's kind of an either or thing. You can put it in the correct place where if you were to spell out the word,
right,
like 2001: A Space Odyssey, you'd put that under T in that system, or you can do what I do, which is I put the numbers first. Yeah, you can either do it first or last, and like iTunes will do it last. I put the numbers first, and I actually do it. But then you have to ask, okay, do you do it in digit order or do you do it in terms of numerical value? And
I do it in terms of the number.
Yeah. Well, that's what I do now too. Is I put it in numerical values. So like, I'm looking at my collection right here. You got 8 Mile, 12 Strong, 28 Days Later, 31, 50, 50, 127 Hours, 200 Miles Per Hour, 500 Days of Summer, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it's like, so each number adds up, instead of like if I were to do it the other way, then 200 miles per hour and then 2001. And it's like, well, that's just weird if you're doing it in terms of actual numerical value.
And then you would do 2046, and then you would do 300, I think. And it's like, that makes no sense, And then 8 Mile. And I don't get that either.
See, when I'm
one thing though that I've been toying with, and just this is completely weird, and I'm sure a lot of people would look at a shelf like this and go, "What?" But I've been thinking about, if I do launch into my project that I want to do, that I'd love to do on this channel, but who knows when we'll ever get to, would be to do like a best of like 10 years later with a year, like lists for each year sort of thing. Like we'd be doing the best of 2010 whenever we get
2020.
But it would be to facilitate that. I've thought about, if I get a chance to organize everything, the initial organization being by release date. And I'm thinking that would be a very interesting and strange way to do it. Now, that is how I subcategorize music. I'll do the artist and then by release date for the album. But, you know.
You see,
that's
I have
that's usually how I would do it too.
I have an interesting way of looking at it when it comes to categorizing it. Now, there was a time where I could remember every title in my collection. That time has passed because I'm old. And
because you have a lot.
And I can still remember a good 90%. But when it comes to a title, it's in like a multi-pack because I've been trying to like thin down my collection in some ways.
I remember when he and his wife were looking at the collection and found titles that they both swore they'd never got.
Yep.
I was like, your collection is so huge, it is reproducing.
But that's the thing. And then, of course, how you rank the multi-packs. One of the projects I did, I was doing up until this event occurred, and I hope to return to, is on my little thing. I actually have it color-coded now for each one that's an Academy Award winner. And because I've gone to all lengths to do Oscar winners in my collection to have all of them, I was going to dedicate a shelf to it. But I was going to, like, as I was going like alphabetically, one down, every time I would hit one I haven't seen in my collection, I was going to do. I think this one was All Quiet on the Western Front was what I was up to. It's still sitting there, kind of turned to the side, like, "Hey, you want to watch me?" And I'm like, "No, I can't get to you right now because I can't physically get to you." But I've got them all like in yellow, so I'm planning on having them listed in alphabetical order, and have like this award-winning shelf when I'm done, because it feels to me, even though, I mean, say what you will about the Academy Awards, most of the winners are good films, and not having seen a good portion of those that I have in my collection is a mistake that needs to be remedied. And so once I get my movie room back together again, and hopefully that will happen sooner than later. A lot of it's just I want to make sure that they've tested the flooring and the walls, and if those are safe, I'll move things back in there. It will that will go back to normal, because it really is good to have those. But I know everybody organized different. Like Dave, you've got the tubs going on in the background. How do you organize with yours?
I got to move some tubs around to move some more tubs in here too. So it's like, and I'm trying to work on my basement because I've got like some bins that I just see over the years. I've collected computer parts and homework papers and all that jazz that my mom just ended up, while I was in different places, just unearthing and handing to me. "Oh, I found this from like your second grade or third grade. You want it?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure," and put it in a bin, save it for later, kind of thing. I mean, I know I've got like a lot of my poetry that I used to do in one of those bins down there. You know, it's like trying to thin down the papers so that I can have more storage space downstairs. But we also have a storage that we pay for elsewhere, where she has a 1972 Grand Prix stored away, and I have half of the storage and whatnot. And I know that's where the rest of my music collection that is left over from my time of collecting music. And I got to go through that stuff eventually. I've got some older computer parts there. Like last couple of weeks ago, I just threw out like 5 flat screen monitors.
My goodness.
From old computers. It's like, it's like, why the hell did I keep these? You know,
I agree. We've been kind of like in the midst of like, okay, now whenever it's just throw out the extra stuff or donate some of the extra stuff that's in the house.
I never used to be that way, but then I found out that I am a hoarder. I am a rat packer, and it's like now I look at the shit and it's like, why the fuck do I need this shit? You know.
And that's what's kind of funny about me is that like because I talk all about how much it hurt to have to sell the first iteration of my collection, and it did. But when it comes to a lot of things, like whatever it is, clothes, furniture, other types of belongings, 9 times out of 10, I really don't care, and I'm happy to get rid of things because I've seen what happens when. That's one of the few things I get from my mom. Because my brother and my dad, especially my brother, can be kind of pack rats, and I just for me, it's like I tend to like to be able to cycle things through, and if it's something that I don't, I find it kind of liberating to be able to, if it's something, sure, if it's something sentimental, then maybe keep it, but I find something liberating about being able to just toss away a part of the past, and that way it doesn't stay with you like a ball and chain. And because I've had it happen where there was like this at the time it was a school for homeschoolers that my parents basically forced me to go to, and I hated it. And they had like their cheaply produced, awful looking yearbooks in an attempt to replicate what a real school would be like. And I had them, and by the time that was done, I was like, just throw them away because I'm never going to look at them again. And it's just like, and I don't want to be reminded of this, because that's part of the thing is like, the more that you can be rid of reminders of the past, at least for me, I have found that to be incredibly liberating. And and that's, I guess, why like the few things that I do care about, that's why they're so precious, because I've been so used to getting rid of things that I don't want to be reminded of. And I think there's like people who want to hold on to everything. It's like, A, that takes up a lot of space. B, who else is carrying it around? Just you, and no one's forcing you to, and yet you're still carrying it around. So why? And it's just.
You always think you're gonna use it later in life.
You think so, but you never do. And that's what I try to get people to realize is that
at one point in time I wanted to create my own computer, so that's why I collected a lot of computer parts. And my mom used to run a resale shop for 9 years, so I just keep coming across monitors that okay, I can put this with that and this with that, and like I'd create my own, electronic.
Well, that's different though, because you're putting that towards an actual like real goal, and I mean that is a perfectly good goal to have. Yeah, because I know plenty of people that have done that.
Just a real quick. I always like to again shout out people who comment. So Domino Palumbo, is that right? Palumbo. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Has said, yeah, I'm on that point now with my collecting where I need to let stuff go. And I think that is, that's true though. A lot of us need to do that. I mean, I've done some thinning in my collection before. I think it's just, it happens to where I've let things go. I've let Slam Dunk Ernest go a couple of times. And somehow it kept managing to get into my collection again. And I don't know how that is.
I still need to get the Ernest films just to watch all of them through.
Man, we should have put that forward for the Free for All month. One of the Ernest movies. Oh well.
There are actually some Ernest collections out there where you can get all of the side movies and the and all of the shorts, which they're just not the main 4, and you can get like 3 out of those 4 in a collection. So you can really for like 1, 2, 3. Like 4 maybe DVDs worth, you can get the entirety of his like Ernest stuff. Well, another one if you're trying to get like the Dr. Otto and the Gloom Beam. It depends on if you consider that as an artist film or
I
not.
need to get that one. Anyway.
But with that being
to blend it together with what I was saying with purging things and my ex, there actually is a bit of a fusion there in the sense that there were a few things that I was willing to let her have because, well, at that time I didn't want to be um, impaired by a lot of extra stuff to have to move, and so like I had like a smaller TV I was gonna let her have, and like certain movies in the collection that she really loved that I didn't really want in the collection because I didn't want to be reminded of her when I watched them, and so there were definitely some aspects to the collection that I was like, well, I don't want to be reminded of this horrible time in my life. And so there is a certain magic to being able to purge things in your life and even in something like a movie collection, which you may or may not regard as sacred or whatever. But, in that case, it was like, I really don't want to have this movie in my collection, not because it's the movie's fault or anything, but just because I need to not be physically reminded of this horrible time in my life. And, eventually I was like, well, I might get those back, I might not. But it's for right that minute, I was like, I just can't endure anymore. So, and that goes into the whole just taking ownership over what about your past are you going to take with you and what are you going to let slip away. And I think that can be a very powerful thing to say, that this part of my life doesn't have to be part of my life anymore. I can just let it disappear.
So, with that being said, I know that Jake needs to get on to King of the Monsters tonight, so I don't want to keep him too much longer on that. And of course, I know, Dan, you're on the East Coast, just like myself, so it's definitely time-wise, it's getting late for you as well. So yeah, and if any of y'all actually do want, just because SeptumSin versus the World isn't going to be doing a lot of publishing this week and maybe the next, depending on how much we've got to do.
Still got Kaiju Combat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does not mean that Inside Movies Galore is going to be slacking. Their great double feature tomorrow night on the channel, which is the let's see here, it was Cloverfield as the show, and we've got Godzilla King of the Monsters, the 2019 sequel to the 2014 Godzilla. So I think we've got some very fun stuff. So I'm just gonna run down each of y'all real quick because we've got some great talent here with us today. Of course, we've got Kotobuki Jake, and he has a wonderful nature channel that eventually he will share with us more episodes one day. Of course,
it's gonna make the Tiger King cry tears of blood.
So I hear.
Dana,
Jake, when Nature Calls 3.
Let's see here. You actually have a channel. I believe it is Indie Horror Film Creative, and
that's right.
Of course, if you want to see him rebuilding his collection, he's got an excellent number of videos there. Some amazing rundowns, some pretty cool out of print titles, and just in general, you've got a couple of creators actually on that channel doing some introductions, hopefully some more content, and I do look forward to that film school that you're going to be teaching us in the future.
Well, now that I've got my new place and everything, I can start to think about how best to do that. But the channel, like you said, Indie Horror Film Creative, and my section of it where I do the unboxings and the rebuilding of the collection, that is called Blu-ray Views.
And of course, he's also a director and actor, and has done some amazing stuff.
And producer and writer. associate producer for the feature film Heir of the Witch, and executive producer of the feature film Acts 2 Grind, starring Debbie Rochon and Stormy Daniels.
Has that ended its... I don't think it's ended it yet, has
No,
it?
it hasn't ended it yet.
Almost, if you want to get onto that Indiegogo is still going.
Well, and who knows what happens with that, because it hasn't gone through its full run yet, so it may become an in-demand title as well if it has reached its goal.
So, and I'm actually
it's far exceeded its goal by now. It's very much into stretch goals now.
If you set a certain amount of money or whatnot, and you reach that goal and beyond, sometimes it becomes an in-demand title where it has an extended period of time on Indiegogo for you to get in on shit. So that may still happen yet too.
Yeah, if you want to get in on that, this is a good time to get on the floor. I've got the first one on order, so that's going to be sitting there. Matter of fact, a couple of the ones that I get more recently are going to be likely to be my go-tos, because I did pull the Inside Movies Galore stuff, but I have not got a lot of access to my main collection. And of course, Dave is with Inside Movies Galore. He's the founder of it, and also Delusions of Grandeur. And you see movie reviews and some pickup stuff and all sorts of fun discussions on that. And of course, a producer of many films at this point.
In fact, I just recently today got my copy of Vulpes, the prologue, which, as you can see, my name's down there under the executive producer title. Just wanted to show that off to you guys. I was very proud of getting it. You always like to see something in hand of something that you've produced. So,
I mean, I've dabbled my foot in for only 2 movies, but it's kind of cool to have it. I mean, I have. For me, I'm actually happy to be a associate producer for Camp Blood 8, because to me that I actually really do love the Camp Blood series, and Camp Blood 8 was a fun movie, so it's worth being associated with that, and it's kind of cool in there. But of course, for all of you who do, for those few of you who do watch SeptumSin versus the World, I thank you, each and every one of you. Y'all mean a lot. And please excuse this temporary hiatus. As I said, there'll still be some videos here and there, and it probably won't be for that long. It just depends on how much time it is before I get my studio back in order again.
It'll give you fun folks who are like me trying to watch the backlog a chance to catch up.
I'll admit the new movie, the new movie episode that's coming out tomorrow will be very short, because all it's an introduction and a slideshow.
And this is for the
releases
for the 25th. Okay.
25th. So for those of you interested, that's coming up tomorrow, and for those of you following the DVD and movie strolls I've been doing, those are definitely on hiatus. Though the next one up will be a movie stroll. Who knows when that will be, but it will be up once I have managed to restore my collection.
Okay.
So with that being said, thank you all for coming in and sharing some of these, some of our harder tales, some of these, some of these more amusing tales, and of course in hindsight, and of course
some of these whales of a tale.
And hopefully people have listened and learned some cool things in this whole deal. So with that being said, thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.